Hello, and welcome to the Avram Davidson Universe podcast. I am Virgil of Literally Books, and I'm with.
Bob
Bob.
of Wheel of Genre. Sorry.
We are two beardless men who are going to talk about a man with an amazing beard, Avram Davidson. Well, you have more beard than me, so
It's not a beard.
lesser bearded men talking about an amazingly bearded writer, Avram Davidson, and his story, whose title I do not remember in its entirety, but I think of as El Vilvoy, but I think it's a little longer than that. And we're going to talk about that story, and Bob's going to correct me because he probably knows the correct title.
You know why I do? Because I wrote it down.
Yeah, he wrote it down. It's right smart.
It's called
He's got a pencil.
I've got it. This lack beard can write. It's
That's right. I'll show those bearded fools.
That's right. El Vilvoy de las Islas. And so it was published originally in 1988 in Asimov's Science Fiction in the Journal. But then it was collected again in 2000. And then I think it's been collected again in Lime Killer. So I think Seth Davis put it into the Lime Killer book. I'm not sure about that, but it's been collected, I think, twice or three times now.
I could look for that. Oh, wait.
Okay.
I could, but it might be in the bottom of a very tall stack. So we'll just...
We'll confirm it in post.
Well, that's right. Somehow you'll find out if that's true or not. Just boom, false. Sorry about
that. So Virgil, you know a lot more about the Lime Killer series because you have that book. You've read some of the Lime Killer stories, and I know you read Manatee Gal, Won't You Come Out Tonight? Mm-hmm. And I believe these are all related, but I am really curious about this British Hidalgo. I know that it's a fictional version of Honduras or Belize. And I know that Hidalgo, the idea is like Spanish or Portuguese nobility. So it is a world where after World War II, things did not really change. So South America is still there's a lot of British control going on or under British guardianship. What do you know about Lime Killer?
So for that series, the little bit that I know, it follows Jack Lime Killer, who's, I guess he's sort of like he owns a boat that explores the rivers in Hidalgo, goes and does trading work, mostly like transporting trade is, I think, the big part of his, that I've seen. The story that is most comes to mind is the Bloody Man is the one that one's the one I've read most recently. And there's a lot of like effort there where in that story, the lead in is that you have a retired archbishop who has a friend of another archbishop who's going to come to this area to retire because money goes a little farther in this area. And it's a very, like you would say, like a place out of time, right? So this is supposed to be, I think, early 1900s, and it's very archaic. You have like steam powered boats or like motorized boats, but there's not a whole lot more than that. I think they still have a telegraph office in that story, right? right. Her Majesty's Telegraph Office or something. And so this weird, just like sort of out of time, and also sort of a weird, like sort of blending, sort of almost magical blending of various cultures from different parts of the world that all had come together in this, like a lot of strange groups, right? You have retired archbishops from the UK coming here to retire, and things like this. So it's kind of like a really wonderful sort of like blending of culture, and in this almost this land itself that seems almost magical. Even like the time seems a little magical, like it's a preserved little sphere within our much more modernized world, much more fast-paced world. Where certain trades, certain types of activities, modes of life still exist, but they sort of have to coexist with a slightly more modern world, a much more fast-paced world. And I really liked that. So
that's really interesting. It's got kind of the steampunk, or almost like the gas lamp literature. It feels like it's out of time in an interesting way, or it's preserving time, like you said.
Yeah.
When you said Her Majesty's office, I just kept thinking of beep, 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 beep.
It's
Really?
basically it.
I got distracted. But this story is very interesting. Let's see if we can find a pathway into this story through that idea of British Hidalgo. This is an interesting story where it's kind of just two buddies. It sounds like they're almost going on a road trip. The narrator is not named, but it might be Jack Limekiller, or it might just be Avram, because at one point there's a little aside comparing. Oh, even there's a aside about language changing and the sounds of different vowels or consonants changing. He says, compare Avram to Abram. And we think maybe this is Avram Davidson narrating about himself. But he's going with his friend Diego. He goes and meets Diego's family, and they're going to Uruguay, which I don't know if that's supposed to be Paraguay, if it's a fictional place. But they go to this place, and as they get there, people just start talking. They're at kind of a family get-together, and people are just talking about stories. And then they say, oh, but one of the best, of course, is El Vilvoy.
Yeah.
And they're like, what is El Vilvoy? And
Right.
everyone, it's interesting because El Vilvoy is a legend. And now, like any legend, there are many different, not just lenses, but kind of ways into entering into the legend and to experience it. So, people have different legends about the claw. Zach and I were talking about the claw. You can all tell it in your own way. But El Vilvoy, the people start arguing about it, and they say, well, he started because he was the boy that defended someone and bit off the occupier's ear, jumped up on them, pushed them away, and bit their ear off and sent them packing.
Right.
But even, people still doubt that. And as we get further into this, these different explanations of El Vilvoy, they're trying to think, okay, where does this even come from? Is it because his name was Wild Boy, Vilvoy, Wild Boy? Then they start thinking, well, he seems timeless because there are so many actual pictures of him. It's not just that it's a legend and there's no proof. There's so many pictures of El Vilvoy. And they start to say, but wait a minute, this picture was taken like 40 years ago. And then another picture was taken 35 years ago. And then 30 years ago. But they all look exactly the same. He's not aging. So it's almost like he's immortal.
Yeah. The hair might be a little longer,
Yeah.
or something, but like the face was always the same. Right. And I like too that like even the incident with the ear. Right. It's like one account says that he had a machete and he cuts the ear off. And then somebody else says, well, he maybe, and then I think then this person is reported to have gone to the hospital and or something. And then they, for some reason, didn't stay. I don't remember if they thought they were gonna, I didn't know if they thought they were going to get arrested or something. But then somebody says, no, he cut him with the machete and he bit his ear off, and it's just, and he's like this wild figure that like bursts onto the scene and like, and everyone else is too afraid to stand up to these men except for El Vilvoy, who just rushes right into battle, right? Rushes right to the rescue. Right. And then he disappears again. And it's like, boom, where'd he go? He's gone, he's like, whatever. He's like, I just wanted I think he said, I just wanted some tobacco for my papa. Or something like that. Something, that's all he wants. That's the only reward he wants is tobacco for his papa, and he goes back to his island that he lives on, which is this sort of like, what island is it? We're not really sure, it's like an island over there.
Maybe the Isle of Man.
Yeah. Which is strange because I heard the Isle of Man, but like, isn't the Isle of Man in Ireland? Isn't it? It's like up in the UK somewhere. Isle of Man. I think there is an Isle of Man. I don't know if it was spelled the same. I don't remember. But I was just like, huh. I'm like, I don't think we're talking about the same island. We certainly couldn't.
Yeah.
But
I stepped under the Giant's Causeway.
That's right. But I just love that it's like, it is like, not only does El Vilvoy in the story seem to step out of the mist and do this heroic action and retreat to it, like even within the story, like it seems like the myth steps out and then retreats, and it's sort of like there's these bit like we were talking just a little bit ago in one of our last videos, how like Melville, for example, I think you had said would like collect facts about whales like alphabetically, like, oh, this whale, and he had some fact that would start with the letter A and he'd write it down. It's almost like you have these bits of myth that people keep presenting, and it's like it forms this picture, but it's like a connect the dots type thing. But maybe not all the dots are there, and you're sort of like, well, what does this dot over here mean? We don't even know why. Is this the dot, or is that a smudge?
Where's my red dot? Oh,
That's right. Where's your red dot? The
just to
recording dot.
remind us to record. Yeah.
That's right.
Um, I think the way you put it is really good because it is like connecting dots, and then people are bringing in new dots and finding new dots, and some of the dots are like a little spurious. You're like, I'm not so sure about that, but it's fun too because it's become such a cultural phenomenon. El Vilvoy was, the person that he attacked is an invader.
Mm.
Later, it's expanded, and no one can really. Okay, I can't say can't prove it. People are proving it in many different ways, but what they say he did, I think at first they say that he decapitated 6 people that were invaders, these soldiers, and then I think
Yes.
it evolved into like 26.
Every time the number is presented, at first
Yeah.
it's like 16. It's like, okay, so they added a 1 in front of the 6, and then it's like
Yeah.
26. You're like, okay.
Yeah.
And then I think, what is it, the proof that we have? I'm sorry, I interrupted you, but then we have
No,
interesting proof.
it's
Go ahead.
if you do remember it, it's really funny.
Yes, it is. He talks about how like some of the proof was like, well, we had these drawings done by the doctor. These 4, I think it's 4 drawings that show these severed heads, right? Because he cuts the heads. At first, as he severs the head with his machete, 6 heads. You're like, okay, that's pretty impressive. And then it's 16. You're like, that's super impressive. And then it says like, never mind the fact that they had modern weaponry, right, against his
Yeah.
machete. It doesn't matter. They had guns. And then it's 26, and you're like, wow. Vilvoy was a little bloodthirsty this day.
Yeah, Vilvoy was bloodthirsty.
He was really adamant about, you are not going to invade this island.
And so
but somehow
when
some people escape. And then somebody says like, well, these 4 drawings from different perspectives show the heads, but then there was something about like you can't there was like the math didn't work out. Like, wouldn't it, like, never mind that 4 times whatever, however many these 6 heads is. Was it like 4? Yeah, there was 6 heads in a picture. Never mind that 6 times 4 is 24, not 26.
Oh yeah, that's
Like, never mind that. And then it just becomes 27 at some point. Then just an extra head is just tagged on. It is like, well, where did the extra head come on? And you're like, I don't know. And that's where it's like, people keep adding to the myth, and it's like, it almost makes it like, how is this true anymore? It's like, then it makes you want to discount it all. And I just love that it's like, you just don't know. You just don't know.
You don't know, and it people keep bringing in other things that they can prove that disprove the legend, but prove it in a different way too. Because someone later says, "You know what? I'm pretty sure what the actual story was is El Vilvoy found all of these severed heads in a cave, and they were from centuries ago from another conflict, and they were so well preserved because they had remained in this cave. And apparently, if a cave is cold enough, the body can just be preserved. No insects will come and get it. No bacteria.
Caves aren't super cold, so that's true.
Caves are super cold.
Yeah.
So, people start saying, "Oh no, he just found 26 heads or 6 heads."
Right.
But
or that it was just 6 heads seen from different angles. It was the same 6
that's
heads
what it
or
was
something.
too.
There is that energy. These are preserved heads in this cave. That Vilvoy showed them. I just, it's so cool. I love that part.
That's great. I love too so as all of this kind of patriotism or nationalism has been drummed up or kind of exaggerated with El Vilvoy as the spokesperson, because the Araguayans are fighting away this other fictional group, and as they've been fighting them away, El Vilvoy becomes the symbol. So years and years and years pass, and El Vilvoy is still a boy. But as people are on these cruises to go past his island just to get a glimpse, they see him like stand up with, with his machete in the trees, looking back at them. Oh yes, El Vilvoy. But we have to talk about, I think, because this just cracked me up and it just blew my mind. I didn't even think about this, but the deception theory.
Yes. And I love that there's like, I guess that it kind of brings into, what did somebody say that like, I think near the end of this story, there's something that's pertinent to this, is where he says something along the lines of, every country has its sort of like, has its Alamo, right? That we've never heard of, right? That we know nothing about, but it was just as important and just as impactful to that area as things, and just as much of their legend as things that we talk about are to us. And yeah, part of this is so there's alternate theories about what's happening, and the deception theory was so great, and it sounds so corny when it's presented, because it's like that it's really Vilvoy is a series of brothers that are
Yeah.
all identical essentially, but they're not the same age. They're not identical twins. They just always look the same. I don't know who their mother's supposed to be, but but Vilvoy, and it's like, and they have names, and their names are like all these liberator names.
Yeah.
But they don't go by those. They go by nicknames that have nothing to do with their regular names. Like Tony is the oldest. Then it's Boney, and I can't remember after that. But they all rhyme like it's like Tony, Boney. There's no baloney, but it's something like that. It's like Tony, Boney, something else, and you're like, okay. But and each one of them has a thing like one of the, and then the last one's name is Max. It's like Tony, Boney,
Yeah.
Tony, Zony, and Max.
And Max.
And Max is the one. Max has his machete, and then one of them likes to hang upside down in trees, and one of them likes to do something, writes poetry, I think, or something like that. I don't
Yeah,
remember.
one of the right.
It's something like that, and you're just like, what? And like and that there's a secret plot by the government. We're not really sure why, to keep like interjecting the next Vilvoy into media, so that this myth consists persists, I should say, in perpetuity. That's what the word I think I was trying to
In
say.
perpetuity. Long live El Vilvoy.
El Vilvoy.
Yes. The deception theory I love. I wanted to ask, it's nuts. I wanted to ask you a couple questions because I think there's a lot of interesting things going on with genre. And then also, I was trying to say in our earlier video that he's like deconstructing a genre because he's telling a legend, but in so doing, he's showing us how legends are created. So he's, because there's people who doubt, there's people who prove their doubt, they have evidence for the reasons that they doubt, and there's people who believe and they have evidence for the reasons that they believe. It's just like, being interested in Nessie and collecting the different pieces of evidence. But at the same time, we're getting the story of Nessie.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. It is. And it's great that, like you say, everybody has this little sort of pet theory.
Yeah.
And how they interact with the myth, and whether it's a pet theory about like the deception theory, and that's how they think, oh, this is how I interact with the myth, it's through the deception theory, or that, or that this part of the myth is true, and that, El Vilvoy really is just this person that's just a certain age. And then there's, I think there's another one even than that. There's a couple other like interactions. I love that also the people who are critiquing it are usually people who should have maybe a little more faith, and you would think who would be a little more accepting of something supernatural. Like one of the biggest one of the most critical people in the story is a priest, right? And he's like, oh, this and this, and somebody's like, well, surely a priest would accept some amount of the supernatural or something like that, and the priest just doesn't really say yes or no. He's just like, you get just like, he's very critical of the whole myth, and it seems to not believe it at all. But that doesn't seem to coincide very much with his own, like the thing that he presents to the people, right?
Yeah, being able to believe or hold space for the supernatural. What do you think? I was wondering, so the way that legends evolve and form, and language is really interesting in here. As you mentioned, like all of the sons, all of the brothers, their names rhyme, but it's almost like you could just look at each one and hear it wrong. So it could still be the one,
right? Because there's some discussion about how certain letters and certain, like,
right.
Abram and Avram, there's even discussion about that and how maybe that's what's happened.
Maybe that's what's happened. And, he speculates there, it could have been Billy Boy, Wild Boy, Will Boy, Vilvoy, and it started to evolve. I was thinking that is really how legends happen, I think, a lot of the time, especially with medieval monsters or ancient monsters. And I was thinking a long time ago for Wheel of Genre, we read the death of Arthur, Le Mort de Arthur by
Oh,
Mallory. And there's a questing beast. There's this thing that's described as a questing beast. And here it's described. It has a serpent's head, a leopard's body, the haunches of a lion, and the feet of a hart. Now, it's saying that it's, looks like a crazy monster. You can't even exactly picture what that is. But people speculate now that it might have been someone just seeing a giraffe for the first time. So they're just describing a giraffe. Like, oh, it's got the legs of a lion and a serpent's head because it's so long.
yeah.
And then we just continued to call it a questing beast. It's become this crazy beast. But you mentioned Herodotus in our last episode, and Zach and I, for We Live Genre, we just read Baudolino by Umberto Eco. And he mentions a monster that Herodotus also mentions, and that Herodotus, is trying to say, does it exist or not? But it's the cynocephali, or the kynocephali, and it's because, maybe, sorry, I should explain what the monster is. It's dog-headed men, so men with the head of
Oh,
dogs,
okay.
right? And so they're in Herodotus, the histories, and then they're also in Baudolino. But it probably is because in Greek, kyno, it would be dog, and then kephale is head. And I guess the expression was to talk about people who are barbaric or just being thick-headed. They would be dog-headed. So that when people wrote it, when the Greeks were writing it, they would say, oh, this person was dog-headed. And then when it got translated into Latin, in medieval Latin, people writing in the mid-ages, in Latin, translating the Greek, they just assumed it was a real dog-headed person. And so they would,
Right,
illuminate
they took a
these.
literal translation of a sort of, like a reductive comment.
Yeah. Instead of a reductive comment. So now it's just there's these actual dog-headed people. And we will probably read the Avram Davidson essay eventually about Hyperboreans, which we think might be connected to Hyperborea and connected to Robert E. Howard. But apparently Herodotus was doubtful of this idea of Hyperboreans, but it means like beyond the north wind. But Herodotus says, I've seen the maps that people are drawing, and I don't think there's a Hyperborea. It couldn't be like all the way out there. I think they just mean really far away. It's like an expression. Yeah. But the whole legend lasted for centuries. So I think this is like, Avram is really showing us how legends form, and it can often be of just a mistranslation or a misunderstanding, and it just perpetuates.
Yeah. I think that's a super perceptive way to look at it, because it absolutely is doing what you're saying, and you've got a unorganized collection of these anecdotes and newspaper photographs. Even those photographs are called into question as to whether these photographs were all taken in a very short period of time and they're just sort of doling them out, or doctoring photographs, like pre-Photoshop photo doctoring. And there's a story that's related about someone who was edited together with some female actress, into much scandal, but it turned out supposedly that the photo was edited, but even that is not, I even said, like, is that really true or not? Was that just this, was that, you know what I mean? Like, was it just sort of like, we are embarrassing this very powerful political figure, I think, and this woman, and was it just sort of like the person who took it ended up being like, oh, that was a hoax, and who knows? But I like, and it just, so this, like, not really great organization of facts makes that, sort of helps make the myth. It just takes a little crack for all that to seep in and to get everywhere. And I love it. I love that you're like, I don't know. It's hard to say. Is this true or is it part of the myth?
Rumors are no fun until they are.
But they are. I love the rhyme. I don't recognize it. But
at the end of this story is a very good afterword by Henry Westloss, which I need to find out more about this editor and writer. But he has a great quote where he says, Avram's stories were usually much wider and deeper than they were long.
Yes. I love that quote. It's so great. And that's true. There's this, in audio format, this is about an hour and a half. And it felt like I had almost a novel's worth, or at least a novella's worth of of history and culture and everything else. But I think my phone is doing weird stuff. Sorry.
It's the
I don't know. I
phone.
don't know if
It's
that comes
always
over
the.
the. I don't know. My phone was like reconnecting to the computer. I don't know if that was like ding dong, ding dong. I'm like, okay, enough of that phone. Stop. I'm trying to have a conversation. Anyway, sorry. um, I don't know what to say. Oh, I just loved that analogy. I just loved. That's so true. It's like you get this. This whole world gets built up that it is partially our world, but like you said, those names aren't quite right? Which is something
Hmm,
else that Howard, I think, did. He would sort of like change the name, right? Because Conan
right.
is a Sumerian with a C, not a Sumerian with an S.
Hmm.
Or is that right? It's something like that. It's something I can't remember exactly how that worked out, but there's stuff like that Howard just would like change the names a little bit. And there's sort of like that same energy here where like some of the names are just a little bit changed. And we're like,
Just
oh, is this real? And then he's like, can you pull all those stories you know about that area into this story and say that all those things are true about this fictional area or not? Or is it
hmm.
something whole cloth of its own? And I like how it's nebulous.
It's nebulous, and there's still the doubters. Calling
Yes.
them. There's the haters calling it a hoax.
Yeah. There's the whole thing. There's the whole thing with the tortoises and how somebody's got
Hmm.
a name carved into the back of a tortoise. And they're like, well, anybody could do that. And you're like, well, the tortoise, the Magellan or something, or somebody else. I can't remember if it was Magellan's tortoise. Like, well, how do we know that? And it's like,
Oh.
yeah, I don't know. So there's like these weird myths about, oh, this tortoise is 200 years old. Well, and then there's a little bit of that. And I like too that our narrator kind of, who you say, like we said, is kind of unnamed and sort of like falls into the back of the story for a long time. And then at the end sort of comes back forward.
Hmm.
And now he notices like, oh, is this the same guy who is changing the tire on this truck by the side of the road or like working in the field
Oh.
and he kind of starts thinking about like, was this the same guy as here and here? What I really liked about that is that it started to give like some credit to me because of course I don't know if I should give away the very ending of the story, but I'll let you decide whether we should do that or not. But
Go for it.
but so the very end of the story, right? We get an old woman who greets one of these um these sort of like a farmer and says, "Oh, Tony, you never get any older." And she's like 98 or something, right? So and she's known Tony for a long time and Tony seems to be a very young man. Right. And this is, I think, the same person that the narrator says that he thinks he's seen in multiple places. And I think, is there some connection with, is this Tony and Boney? It's like, are
Tony of
all the,
Tony Boney fame.
are they all existing? Are there that many Vilvoys who are all look the same? Are there like 5 or 6 of them and they all look the same and they all are seemingly timeless? I like the idea that maybe like it isn't Vilvoy. There really is more than one Vilvoy, and they really are all like have extended life, right? And I guess we forgot to mention too that there's this sense of like these secret springs or spas,
Hmm.
right? That the Vilvoy might know about, that might be like sort of a fountain of youth sort of myth that gets pulled into the story that I thought was great, right? Is Vilvoy, because the Presidente goes to the island for seemingly to get rest, but was it so that the Vilvoy could take him to this spring? Because
Hmm.
at the end, there's an interview and they're like, we notice you're in much better health and everything
Oh
else. He goes,
yeah.
well, he's like, well, I don't really have time to talk about that. It seems like he's very like, he doesn't want to talk about that. Right. So like,
Hmm.
did the Presidente get to go and drink from these secret hidden springs that only the tortoises might know about? Right.
I love
So
too
good.
after they've got the springs and then someone else says, "Oh, I don't think that's it. I think it's the fruitarian diet. I
Right. The
think it's the
diet was really
fruitarian
good.
diet. He just eats fruit."
He's fruit and all of a sudden he doesn't consume these modern things. And that is kind of the energy, right? Like, oh
Hmm.
yeah, if you just stop eating this and this, you're gonna live so much longer and everything, and that we even have that now. Which is not to say that it isn't true, but that's where it kind of like it gets nebulous. It's like, well, some of that's true, but does it mean that you're gonna live an extra 200 years or something? Or never look older? I don't know.
Superfoods.
That's right. Super. are out there with the Vilvoy. He's got the super brews.
He's
He
got
had the
this
original Shakeology. Yeah.
the original Shakeology. El Vilvoy's Shakeology.
Shakeology.
Ugh.
We should make our own Avram drink, the Vilvoy.
The
We can make our own pyramid scheme, our own multi-level
Yes.
marketing, our own multi-level
The best way to make money: smoothies,
smoothies.
juice.
We're gonna pivot the whole channel to smoothies. This
Yes.
is where we're going. All smoothie.
We're dropping it all. We're just
That's
doing
right.
smoothies.
Then when you get a cup, it's got a part of it. You have to collect all the cups. It's got the whole story. You got to get, there you go. See, we got parts of the story on the cup. You have to get the whole collection.
El Vilvoy, El Vilbob, El Verbob.
Oh, sorry. Deviation.
Virgil Bob Smoothie. Okay, anyway, okay.
Right.
Virgil
yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead. I'll wait.
I was gonna close it soon. Do you want? Is there anything else you want to go over?
So at the end, like you said, that afterward was great, and it did sort of. I think we both felt good because it confirmed things that we had seen. Like it felt like Vilvoy had a Tarzan sort of energy at some point, which I liked. There's a little bit of that talks about like how there's a little bit of Swiss Family Robinson in there.
Yeah.
There's a couple of references that I didn't directly know because I haven't read them. But something I thought about when it talked about how there was the deception theory with the different brothers, right? And then when we see all these different, when our narrator is seeing so many different people who all see, like, this guy looks just like this other guy, like 2 or 3 of them that he'd seen, and they all kind of look the same. And he's like, was that the same one? And of course he just goes on to the story. It reminded me of another character that I'm really fond of, a pulp character, the Phantom. So I don't know if you know anything about the Phantom, right? So there's the Phantom, right? Usually wears purple, usually in purple, right? And the Phantom is like a turn of the century sort of pulp hero, kind of like the Shadow, but except I think he's one of maybe the very first superheroes. I don't know if he's the exact first, but he's one of the very, very first. And I know there's reading the Phantom history, but I know a lot of like superhero tropes. A couple come from the Phantom, and one of them is like the tights, like the shorts on the outside, like Superman's outfit. That was the Phantom that did that first. And it was based on like strongmen from the circus. That was where that idea came from. But the reason I bring the Phantom up is that the Phantom is the son that he lives in the jungle, and I think it's a little nebulous as to which jungle it was. It was one way or another. I think it's supposed to be in Africa, but maybe it's not Africa. But he lives in the jungle, and in this like hidden tomb, and there's this myth that the Phantom never dies, but really it's the son of the Phantom always takes over as the next Phantom, and he's the ghost who walks, right? He's supposed to have never died. He's like hundreds and hundreds of years old. He's a ghost, right? But it's a myth that the Phantom plays on, where it's like it's really his son who takes over. And it sort of reminded me that like are these Vilvoys like being taken over? Is it like the next brother taking over or something? It just reminded me of that Phantom myth about how the Phantom can't die or something, and how he's really a ghost, and how the native people who know the truth sort of perpetuate the myth, because that's part of that mystique that they enjoy. So I don't know. I thought it was kind of a neat, like, I don't know if it was really a nod, but I felt close.
That does feel close. It's very interesting. So, superhero vibes.
Yeah.
Like Goose and Rooster from Top Gun.
I love it.
All right, Virgil. Let's call it. Yeah, it was great great story. A lot of fun to talk about this story. And we will meet back again for more Avram Davidson.
Absolutely.
Cool. See you, Virgil.
See you. Take it easy, Bob. And everybody else.